So, we will talk about now in this episode the predictive mind. I have
Predictive
heard
mind.
that it's one of the most fascinating theory in cognitive science.
It
Why?
has established itself much over the last years. If you think back in history, first the psychologists became behaviorists, thought that the behavior can be just explained by punishment and reward.
Yeah.
And over the last 2 decades at least, it's became more and more clear how important it is that all of our minds try to predict what's going on, try to predict the next word that you're going to say, predicting that I will touch my knee and I will hear it and I will feel it, and if it's not there, I will be super surprised.
So, you know something? I had panic attacks. You know, I'm Syrian. It's normal for Syrians. Like 99% of Syrians
Mm-hmm.
had or still having panic attacks. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and like because
Sorry to hear.
It's okay. Thank you. And because I'm professional panic attacked or attacker, I don't know. Like, but I'm
You
professional.
get them. You're a
Yeah.
professional handler of panic
Yeah,
attacks.
yeah, exactly. So like, the first thing I
Right.
do, I try to feel my
Your
heart.
pulse.
Yeah,
Mm.
and sometimes I don't feel it.
Oh.
Because you send your
Mm-hmm.
like fingers here and like
Yeah.
you predict that you will feel something and you don't feel something. Though my mind, what?
Then you get really worried.
Yes, no. This is reaction. This is action. Bring me big reaction of being like, how to say it, like, oh my god, like I'm dying, where's my it's not working, like, so I panicked more and I helped my panic attack to be more panicked
Mm.
and more like
So then you shouldn't do this.
exactly, yeah. So like sometimes like, but my mind needs to predict and to be sure that everything is working.
We all trapped in our habits, and meanwhile, I guess maybe before it did help, or so you are, well, the pulse is not as high, so I can calm down again. Also, but yeah, that can be problematic.
But why the mind
Mhm.
has to work in prediction?
If we wouldn't work in predictive mode, we would just be reactive, stupid robotic agents, although robots get much smarter now,
Yeah.
and they also use prediction for that. And we would just be reactive zombies, right? We would just follow our rewards that we gained in the past. But our world is much more complicated than this, and in different contexts, again,
Yeah.
we need to interact differently with the world. So we really need to be more flexible than just being reactive, and watch for alternatives, right? And we all know the situation where you stop yourself saying something in mid-air, right? Because you realize, oh, this has some negative implication for this person. I really shouldn't say this because there's another train of thought that is implied by what you are saying, right? Or it came out and then you realize afterwards, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it this way, right? So that's how predictions unfold in their life.
Yeah, but like so it's conscious process and unconscious process also.
I would say inherently prediction itself has nothing to do with consciousness, really. I mean, you can show visually the visual illusions, right? Some people know the checkerboard illusion, for example, right? Where a field just looks white, although it's gray, and it's as gray as a gray field, very close by to it. It's because our brain has this wonderful predictive capability that also subconsciously, for example, takes care of the light conditions and thus infers, okay, which actual color a particular surface has depending on the light conditions. And that's usually correct, actually, that computation. but only in the illusion then you kind of show where it looks yellow, but actually it's fully gray if you look at the RGB values of it, because your brain calculates, it's a very bluish light, so something that is gray is actually yellow, or the other way around. So there's subconscious, fully unconscious predictions unfolding in our minds, and also conscious predictions.
So it explains the theory, explains a lot of illusions.
Lots of illusions are explained by this, yes.
Yeah.
You have tons of illusions.
You showed me.
I showed you a couple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one very well known is a Ponzo illusion. So there you have two bars. One, they're the same size, but they are visualized in an image as if they would lie on a train track, right? That goes away from you, right, from the camera. And so if I put it like this, and I have the imagination of the train track, then basically if I have the same size bar, because my brain projects it into that three-dimensional depth space, right? And if it's the same size bar, if it's further away from you, it must be bigger to have the same size in pixel space. And so that's the illusion, right? So you calculate, you project everything into a 3D imaginatory space, if there's any indicator for a three-dimensionality.
It's still I think for the people who doesn't study cognitive science, unclear what is predictive mind. Let's take it to the social world. I will give you an example. I'm Syrian, you know this, and a lot of Syrians now trying to compare between the recent regime and Al-Assad regimes. And Al-Assad regime is the worst. Nothing worse than this, okay? So always people are feeling, everything will be okay, don't worry. We will never face something
as bad as it has been.
Exactly. But, okay, if Al-Assad is like in scale of 10, he's 10. Okay, we don't need 8 or 9. At least we need like 2 or 3.
In terms of badness, 10 is worst.
Yeah, exactly. He's 10.
Getting better in terms of
exactly. Values. Like I'm not gonna say I want -5 or -10. Okay, let's say 2. Right. But like now people are facing 9 and they are saying
0 is heaven or
no, not -10 is heaven.
-10 is heaven.
0 is Germany without AfD.
Right.
But there is AfD.
Let's not get too political, delicate topic, but definitely the value system is predictive relative to some reference, if something is relative to each other. This is another illusion, Ebbinghaus illusion, that shows you the big and small circles, and the small circle in the middle, same size, actually relative to big or even smaller circles on the outside. If it's smaller circles on the outside, the center looks bigger, and the other way around, right? So you always have some anchor point, some relativity that you compare stuff to, and our brain seems to do both. Yeah, it has relative anchors that it compares to, and sign of absolute size, right? If you need to grasp it, then you need to have more or less the absolute size, although you might still want to be aware of it, that you're grasping that thing that is relative to the rest, smaller or larger, which is also useful in decision making, right? So again, it's not really a fully failure of the brain, but it just tells you how the situation of the world looks like. So there's relativity and absolute predictions, and those predictions are importantly not only, right, prediction as a term in everyday language usually is like temporal prediction, right? You predict over time, right? But you also predict relative to each other, relative to social, cultural, political regimes, norms that you lived in, that you experienced. And so there's also this relativity within these non-temporal domains, and not necessarily also spatial domains, but also social domains, quality of life domain. Tell me others.
Yeah. I think people have tendency to feel nice, like to feel okay, we are safe, we are in a good position now.
Brains help us usually with that.
Like it's not, it's like the brain and the mind, like in general, the mind. Some people, yeah, you know, like no, don't say mind, say brain, or yeah, it's like trying to send signals that don't worry, right? But sometimes no. But I think prediction is a way for us socially to feel everything is okay.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. But also, on the other hand, prediction or predictive mind also can explain some like schizophrenia, like some mental
Some mental
illness.
health issues, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in schizophrenia, there's a lot of indication that something is wrong with your predictive system. So the communication between different brain areas is disrupted to a certain extent, and that can happen then everywhere in the brain. So that's why the expressions of schizophrenia can be very diverse. And the underlying mechanism, it is hypothesized. I wouldn't now fully guarantee that this is the whole answer, but that the synchronization that guides the predictions, the associations between your brain network that you have active at any conscious moment is disrupted to a certain extent. And so if a prediction comes to a different brain area, like say I here touch my hand with the other hand, but the perception that I get is not exactly what I predict. So I start to dissociate the tactile perception that I get here, and I hear from those fingers also, of course, and I cannot merge them. They don't fit each other. And then one explanation that the brain then erratically comes up with is that this is not my hand, because this doesn't fit. And so something is wrong, so I detach. So I think that basically this must be some other entity that touches my hand. It's in fact the case that it has been shown that schizophrenic people are suffering from ticklish behavior. Right? They can tickle themselves to a certain extent, whereas in non-clinical populations, right, you cannot really tickle yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that's because you predict the dynamics, yeah. And so you X them out, but if you have some other person start tickling you, right,
I will fly.
It can be very, and in the mid ages, I hope nobody's doing this anymore in this world. They had people tickle them to death, right, by putting like honey on something or something on the feet, and then let some animal lick them, right?
Yeah.
It's horrible. Because you cannot cancel it out. Yeah? And so the dynamics that you experience are so erratic, so you get tickled basically, and start laughing or whatever you're doing, right? You want to get rid of this kind of erratic stimulation, right? But if you do it yourself, you can cancel it out, right?
Yeah. Because like zero,
you're creating the erratic dynamics yourself, right? And so you have a source of the erratic tickling perception, and so then you can cancel it out, and you lower the error to an extent that it's not ticklish anymore.
Yeah, but this is related to what the predictive mind means. So let's deconstruct the theory.
That is exactly what the predictive mind means, right?
Yeah.
And this is now more, well, it's an example of a temporal prediction, but also a multimodal prediction, right? Between motor behavior and tactile perception, right? So it's a motor modality and a tactile modality in this case, and maybe a little bit visual because I see it, right? But mainly those two modalities. So there's crosstalk between modalities, right? They predict each other essentially over time, right? They predict each other, their dynamic stimulation, the sensory signals, sensory dynamics that you perceive are mapped onto your motor dynamics and vice versa, and so they can cancel each other out. In this case, the motor is the cause and the sensory is the effect, of course, and so you can cancel those out. As you do all the time while you move your hand, right, or whatever you move of your body, you basically cancel out the proprioceptive feedback that you get, right? So you like anything that any motion you have, right? Your brain gets signals that you do this motion, that this motion occurs.
Explain this for someone is not studying cognitive science.
I'm trying. Sorry,
I
guys.
I will help. I will help.
Okay.
The mind has a perfect model.
Not a perfect model. I mean, there's a model.
A model.
Yes.
But it's perfect
And it's a
for the mind.
predictive model, right?
But for the mind, it's the perfect one.
That's the best one it has, for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So every mind has its own perfect.
Its own model.
Yeah. So like tackling, like the mind knows what is gonna happen. This is the model.
Right.
And this is the sensory. We like there is a signal from down to up.
Yeah.
This is called in prediction mind theory forward.
I mean, this
feedback.
Well, that's first of all, this is just proprioceptive sensory information, right?
Yeah.
And so your inner feeling, how your body is, your muscles, and everything of
if
that.
If it's the same, 100% of the world model.
Of what you predicted with your world model.
Of what you were predicted with your world model.
Yeah.
This is what the world model. This is the prediction. Mm-hmm. The error is zero.
The error is zero.
So the signals are.
So essentially, you get a confirmation of that. What you are expecting should occur actually occurs.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a confirmation that your world model works fine. That you are actually doing what you intended to do. If you kill yourself or something. And so that means.
And no surprise.
And then there's no surprise, and you
this
are
is
happy
me.
to process it. And this is also some philosophers say that this is the core of our conscious self-feeling, right? How the qualitative feeling of how you live, how you perceive your own
Because the newborn
life.
babies start first to touch themselves. No, this is my body, because they
actually
only
before birth already. They seem to know already at birth.
The body. Yeah.
That if this finger touches, their own finger touches themselves, they are not
so this is
surprised.
The first they are trying to assure their world model of their body and for their sensation. Then the mother, because they know the mother's voice, and the mother.
That's why they calm down really fast. If you put them to their mom after birth, for example, they hear the heartbeat. And this inner life regularity, and they feel they can calm down, right?
The error is zero.
Then, well, it's parts of it, right? At least it's lower as much, right?
Yeah. So there's no alarm.
I would say the error is never zero, right? But it's much lower than I mean, if you imagine getting born, right? This must be so shocking for you, right? It's cold. There's no boundary anymore around you. You don't have the nice warm fluid. I mean, it's basically when you get out of your bathtub or something like this, which is usually if you are in a cold room, right? It's cold and very uncomfortable. Yeah.
So it knows their mother's sound, and this is was uploaded in their memory.
Mm-hmm. It's part of the world model, essentially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then, when they hear the voice, it's the same.
Yeah.
Or
at least similar. And then they realize they are safe.
And they are relaxed.
They're where they were before, and they were safe so far, so they feel safe again.
Then the voice memory expand in the world model of this new born baby. The father, the sister, and the siblings. Then
any people that they will get to know, right? And they build their predictive model, in fact, also of the auditory voices, the language. They learn really early the general patterns of a language. First few months, you get this sensitive period. that they distinguish the individual vocals and so forth. And later it becomes much harder, right?
Yeah.
If you had particular languages never heard as a child, it's very difficult to distinguish nuances in that language that are not relevant in your own mother tongue.
Yeah. So, 3 months later, the uncle who was living in Berlin come to Tübingen. He tries to carry the baby.
Right.
And what is the reaction? Why? Because the error is huge.
Mistrust, right? Also something that evolution has given us, right? That the baby needs to signal if there is danger, right? And what's danger for the little baby, right? It's large prediction error, right? Something that cannot be explained, so it's large prediction error, right? And this can be tummy aches and other issues with the own body, but of course it can also be social situations, right? Or feeling left alone, or suddenly some strange entity that acts very different from my predictive models is perceived, and then help me, right?
Another example for predictive mind theory.
Mm.
Sometimes you are like sitting with a friend, and this friend says, or like not like trying to take a sip from the tea, and oh my God, it's so hot, and like I burned my tongue, right?
Yes, yeah.
And this could be explained by the predictive mind theory.
Again, by predictive mind theory,
Yeah.
right? I mean, your expectation is obviously that the tea is not as hot anymore, and you don't also want
drinkable.
It's drinkable, right?
Yeah.
And so you get, I mean, in this case, you get, of course, two prediction errors at once, kind of, right? I mean, the one prediction error is that it's hotter than expected, and the other prediction error is that this actually hurts your body, right? And you want to kind of have a homeostatic, safe state of your body, and anything that goes out of that homeostatic area, right, getting hurt, is essentially also some form of prediction error, right? Right. Another example is the milk carton or so that you take out of the fridge, right? And you have some expectation how much milk is in there, or right, whatever it is. And if it's, at least if you don't see it beforehand, right?
You send your hand.
And use your hand, right? And often you get this situation, right? That whoops, right?
And
you suddenly have thought it's
you give an order
fuller,
to hold it,
and you have
with an energy of half liter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have the energy of a half liter. Maybe you think, okay, it's the second day in the fridge or whatever, so it's half full or half empty, and then your pressure is tuned to this, right?
Yeah.
And if it's nearly fully empty and you expected it nearly full, right, you will have the situation that you go much higher, right? This is not only the pressure that you put, but also the force that you impose to lift it, right? And that all is tuned to your expectations.
Why the mind works in predictive mode?
Because it's much smarter this way, right? If you would not have any prediction of the milk carton, right? Then which force should you apply?
And then you lose always power.
You always would lose power, because in the end, the best thing, I guess, would then be to use maximum force that you usually need, at least maximum for the milk carton. And so it's much more often too high, so unnecessary high. Additionally, also, of course, it's dangerous, right? I mean, if you apply the wrong force, you might lift it way stronger than necessary,
and then you will split on the floor.
And you split on the floor, and you hurt yourself, right, by hitting something.
Instead of consuming 1 calories, you will consume 1,000 calories, and you need to eat more, and there is no more food.
In this case, it would be free workout, maybe, to clean the floor. But
So the mind needs to take care of the calories of the body.
It needs to take care of the calories, right? And it needs to take care also of its own mind effort, right?
Yeah.
In the end, right, that theory develops, and maybe that's for another episode, the details, right? But the cognitive effort is the continuous adjustment of the mind state to the outside environment in pursuance of one's goals. And so if you have always large errors, and if you don't do good predictions, you just predict the average all the time or something, your errors are much higher than if you predict really how things are, the current states in the world. So your errors are higher, so really to act appropriately in the environment, you need to compensate for all these errors with cognitive effort. So you're also saving energy actually by doing this.
Yeah.
Cognitive energy, thinking energy.
Yes. Like it's the same situation with like a child becomes a teenager suddenly, and this child is 120 centimeter, 1 meter 20 centimeter tall, and suddenly
It's only 160.
160.
Yes.
Everything
It
will
goes
go
rather
wrong.
quick, no?
Everything goes wrong. Yeah, because like all predictions are changed according to the body, and you think so or no?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
it is part of it. Of course, in puberty, a couple of other things happening, like myelinization, I guess. And but yeah, also the body size changes rather radically, and that leads to errors, of course. Right?
Yeah, so like for mothers and fathers, like just like give them time to
Yes.
adapt to their new body. Yeah, and then they
Yes.
have the new world model that fits. Yeah. So I know now, like now we know what is predictive mind, and we talk about contextualizing
Write
predictive
us
mind
if
before.
you
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
have further questions.
Yeah, and we know how it is socially related to a lot of things. But let's talk about AI. Why predictive mind is crucial for AI, for robotics, for computer science?
Yeah, in multiple senses, but I mean, in the end, it goes the same way, right? We have talked on the human mind. We cannot just be reactive zombies. No? We have goals and we want to achieve them, and in order to achieve them seamlessly and without too much cognitive effort, we need to predict the pathway towards our goals and also plan and reason about it. And that's what AI is also trying to do in robotics. Clearly, we have model predictive control, for example, as a keyword, where the predictive robotics model is used to issue the control commands to the motors of the robot. So that's all being explored and involved. In these artificial systems, there is model-based planning and reinforcement learning, and so these are all these facets along these lines. But right now, the best models that everybody is super excited about are large language models, right? And they are autoregressive models, right? So they also predict. They learn to predict. They learn to predict the next word, right? They learn to predict the sequence of words or a program structure that corresponds to a verbal description. So they learn predictions as well, but they cannot really plan with them so well. They cannot reason about them so well. Yeah? Probably because that predictive structure, the latent predictive states that these systems are in, are not as well structured as they are, to a certain extent, at least in our human minds.
But how, also the same question, scale of 10, how AI comparing to human mind can perfectly predict, or using the predictive mind theory, or like this framework?
Yeah, that's a good question, right?
Yeah.
It's
like 10 is
10
is humans.
10
not,
is humans,
not
no?
God. Yeah,
Yeah.
God 100. Yeah.
Not if we did God for 100, then yes, maybe that should be unreachable, I guess.
Yeah, because like if God exists, so
it's tricky to say, right? because large language models are so damn good and or are so fantastically good, and they solve so many issues that we had not thought that they could do this, and so they are predictive in their sense, right? But they don't have, as we talked last episode, no good contextualization, yeah,
Till now.
till now, and so their predictive abilities are not very innovative, right? They are autoregressively merging to the mainstream, to the standard solution. So for any standard problem, for any problem that you believe there should be a lot of text about it in the literature, on the internet, in chat rooms, on GitHub, then you will find good solutions. Yeah. But anything that goes out of this box, that wants to do something more innovative, then you really need to have a different, more compositional, contextual form of predictive world models that you can explore actively with your mind. And this is, until now, I guess, not on the 10 level, yeah, but more on the 6-ish level or so,
6-ish?
maybe.
Yeah, I think less. You know why? Because like I wrote today to ChatGPT, instead of problem, I wrote or problem orlem. So like I instead of writing P, I wrote O.
Right.
So orolem.
Orlem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Orlem.
LLM, it's easy for LLM.
It's not a problem.
Yeah, like orlem, okay, it's a problem. Like, because like you take the word and compare.
I mean, that's easy though. That's easy
yeah.
to explain also why a large language model can do this really easily.
Yeah,
Because
and in communication also, do you remember like 15 years ago, like part of the message is missing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then because they used in communication, telecommunication, like the analog, then they started to use the digital coding and encoding.
Sure, and then
Yeah, so then when you have when you have
little
analog,
errors, right?
if something was lost because of the clouds, it's lost.
It's lost.
You cannot do anything. You don't know, is it here or in the pic or here?
Right.
The message, because the carrier is, some of the carrier was lost.
Right.
But if it is like analog, it's either 1 or 0.
If it's digital.
If it's digital,
right.
It's either 1 or 0.
Right.
So it's predictable. So we didn't have any like afterward. There's no like part of the message is lost, right?
If you have some redundancy in the code and so forth, you can recover lost bits, and to a certain extent, of course, at some point it fails as well.
So telecommunication engineers solved it also 10, 15 years ago, maybe more.
Sure.
Yeah. So now LLM.
But in LLMs, it's a little different.
I know. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, the first layers in LLM. I mean, the input first of all is tokenized. So that already takes care of little typical typos and spelling errors, right? That just occur in all human text copy. And so that the first layers most likely are the optimal layers to get rid of such spelling errors and typo errors. So they project it immediately to some more general semantic space on the word level, on the word basic bits of meaning level, not bits but meaning bits basically level, right? That takes care of these errors basically.
Exactly.
So it's very forgiving in that sense, much more forgiving than us humans, because for us this is of course not so. Well, of course, why is it for humans not so easy actually in this sense, right? If you have a little spelling errors, it's also easy, right?
It's in Arabic, like I don't know which year they start to use dots on the letters. Like 1,000 years ago, maybe, or 700.
Okay, right.
Because there were a lot of like non-Arabic Muslims are coming and trying to study Islam and study the language, and so it was hard for them to understand the context of the words without the dots.
Mm-hmm.
But for Arabs, you don't need dots. So there is like a very famous test, like it's like a joke in Facebook and Instagram. Like there is a script, and then when you finish reading it, did you notice that there's no dots in this script? And then there's no dots. But your mind, your predictive mind,
Okay.
doesn't see this.
So the dots are redundant, not
Yeah.
really needed.
Yeah.
Just giving additional information. It's
Yeah.
not really needed.
Yeah. So somehow we have it in human minds.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but not in big scale. If I'm telling you, like in German, I'm saying something like ich kann nicht kommen, weil ich. Then the verb at the end. If I didn't say the verb, you will.
Then you lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ich kann nicht kommen, weil. This is how it's saying in German.
Yeah. And then you
Weil
would
ich
continue, weil ich
kann.
ein anderes Date habe.
Yeah, and then the verb at the end.
Ja, genau, verb at the end.
Yeah,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
I will never know why you are not coming. If only one word is missing.
If the verb is at the end.
Why
then
he
you
is
can-
not coming?
Right.
He's sick? Or
But you're constructing it, right? And that's
Yeah.
why we actually usually give also the reason, right? Because we know that the other person, her predictive mind, his predictive mind, will question that, will want to know, right? Why? Right?
Why?
Because we want to have a consistent story, and if there is no reason given, then the other person wants to know this.
And this takes us to your not recent paper with Asia, the paper before the contextualizing predictive mind, which is not like yet published, right? The indirectness.
The indirectness paper, was
Yeah.
also. Yeah, right. This is in fact part of that,
The
right?
predictive also, yeah.
So it's again predictive, and you are inferring the reasons for why people say certain
I know
things.
the paper, but they don't know the paper. So the paper is about.
So the paper is about our usage of indirectness, right? Why are we often not saying things straight out,
Yeah.
but nuancing our
Yeah.
utterances?
Yeah. For example, in the paper, there was like two persons met in front of a poster about a conference in machine learning.
You have to tell me that detail now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one of like the guy wants to tell the lady that he doesn't know if she is like
Pro or cons.
pro or
again.
cons
Right.
machine learning,
Right.
and he wants like to still have a good, because he doesn't know the prior,
A good conversation, right?
and maybe ask her
And wants to avoid a potential conflict,
Exactly.
right, in the opinion space, right? So if you can imagine a conflict, somebody is very much pro a certain thing, right, but you are more kind of against it, but you still would like to discuss about it, possibly even like to merge your opinions in the end and find like good reasons why you should be a little bit more pro, but the other person should be not as outrageously pro as she might have been at the beginning. And so it's a good idea to navigate this opinion space in a little bit more nuanced way, and so you stay a little bit more ambiguous, more indirect in your utterance,
Yeah.
right? And because it avoids a conflict, but it also allows the other person to navigate her own opinion towards you,
And
if you
update.
like, and update the opinion space
Without
meanwhile,
any
without
touch.
without
Yeah, touch.
without any disagreement, a full disagreement,
yeah,
right? Yeah. And so that's a really nice way also to think about it, right? Yet your predictions are never crystal clear, and this could be also opinions or whatever it is. So I mean, in the end, right, there's hardly anything that we know for absolute certainty. Maybe
Yeah.
that we die someday, but right, there's not so much really that we fully know for 100% certainty. We are often very sure, 99.9, whatever,
Yeah.
but there's still some uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
And particularly in opinions, it's really good idea if you think about it to maintain some uncertainty in your opinions, because you can never be fully sure about
Yeah. So your
about any
advice.
opinion.
So your advice, if anyone of the audience wants to be, how to say it, more peaceful person and more diplomat.
A diplomat usually should be somebody that formalizes things in a more flexible, nuanced way to find good compromises
So
in the
expand.
end. But currently we are perceiving more polarization behavior, and which is another strategy that obviously pushes groups apart, separates, singles out things, elicits conflicts. But of course, at first it also gives the individual people a much more stronger, powerful appearance, and that's what we're seeing being played out right now, unfortunately. So I can only urge everybody to reflect on their behaviors and realize that a part of ambiguity allows to find good common grounds, which we should be after.
So for a peaceful communication, your recommendations are: one, ambiguous utterances.
Keep it indirect to a certain extent. But of course, you also, in the end, we always have this competition in our world, and it's now very social, political kind of, but in the end, we have always this competition. So, I mean, if there are issues that are really at stake for you, then you also need to voice them. If you're always the nice guy that always stays ambiguous and indirect, if you are interacting with exploitative people that don't care about others that much, then you will be overly exploited. So since we live in a world where there are clear exploiters, we also need to make sure that we don't just give up all the time, right? So that's the damn balance between like indirectness and nicety, and working on freedom and avoiding conflict. But meanwhile, of course, if you are exploited too much by others, then you also at some point need to stand up and say, hey, this is too much.
Yeah. But like, okay, you can stand for your values, but expand your predictions.
That is something that you should definitely, that we would hope to do, that we are flexible enough to live up to your values, but also accept that other people have other values. Yeah. But they nonetheless, in the social, if the values collide, right, that the values are fully incompatible, because the one exploits you because your values are to be overly nice, and the other person is just to reap efforts and take people, manipulate you. The nice, stupid people that just never go for conflict, then we have also a problem, right? So, so that's the dilemma that we are in actually right now in our world, I believe. Yeah.
So we need to think more about our advices.
The advices are not trivial either. You can.
Don't be naive.
Don't be naive. Don't be naive. Don't be always just giving in. If you always give in, it will not work either.
The sea waves.
We have
dancing with the
yes. Yeah. A good balance between sea waves, strictness and politeness.
It was a good episode. You think? Do you think?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yes. No.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mudar.
Thank you for watching. Next episode we will have our first guest, right?
That we hope that we can recruit him. We don't have the confirmation yet. But if we don't get the first candidate, we will find
another. Yeah, we will always find. Yeah, yes. So thank you very much, and
take care.
Bye.